Hey everyone, Angus here with Ironboat Fly Shop. Today we're going to be tying up a Purple Haze. This is one of my favorite patterns for fishing smaller rivers, smaller streams. Great in low light conditions, but also can be fished very successfully on sunny days as well. Originally designed by Andy Carlson sometime in the early 2000s. Not only is it a great attractor pattern, but can also be fished as a mayfly pattern as well. So we're going to be tying this today in a size 14. Start my Uni 8/0 thread today. We're going to be using purple. I'm just going to wrap that to about where the barb is here. We're going to pinch that off later. So I'm going to start wrapping my thread about to the midpoint between the eye of the hook and our hook point here. And we're going to be tying in our parachute post. Today we're going to be using Chernobyl afterglow fiber. This is one of my favorite materials for parachutes, and you can use calf tail hair as well. So I'm going to double this over my thread here, get some good tight wraps just in front, trim off my excess just so it's a little bit easier to work with, get a couple tight wraps in behind here as well. And as for parachutes, I think it's kind of up to you as to whether you'd like it to be a little more natural or you want to use a synthetic such as parachute post or Chernobyl afterglow fiber. So what we're going to do here is we're going to flip our hook in our vise, and we're just going to start wrapping our post here. I found this is the most manageable way to tie in a post. Sometimes it's a little tricky to tie it horizontally. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a couple drops of Zap-A-Gap and just coat my thread here. Just get a couple tight wraps on that post so it locks everything in. Again, just do a couple quick wraps. So we're going to reposition our hook in our vise here. Make sure that's nice and secure. So we're going to wrap our thread all the way back to our barb here. And we're going to be tying in our tail. So for the tail, we're going to be using moose body hair today. I've seen this fly tied with quite a few different materials as well. I've seen it tied with deer hair, comparadun hair, and also calf tail hair as well. And I think that just goes again as to what you want to use for this fly. So just going to give that a quick stack here to make sure all of our tips are the same length. And I want those tips to extend about the length of our hook bend. So I'm going to tie that in. And we're going to try and cut all of these remaining tips here. Just going to cover those up, and we're going to start building a nice little natural taper here. Our next step here is we're going to be tying in our ice dub. One thing about this ice dub is the fibers are a little bit longer in the packaging, and because we're going to use such a sparse amount, we're going to dub this onto our thread very lightly and we're going to use a little bit of low tax wax as well. Just get a little bit of that wax on there. And here we're going to create a dubbing loop, and we're going to give this a good spin. Found this is the best way to use ice dub when working with smaller flies, rather than having a very bulky body. It gives that nice tight profile of, say, your smaller mayflies. So again, we're just going to create a nice little natural taper here with our thread. Now we're going to come in here with our dubbing spinner, and we're going to make sure this dubbing loop is nice and small. Spin it 2 to 3 times, and we're going to start wrapping this around our shank here. Traditionally, this pattern is tied with purple floss rather than dubbing. I think it goes to show the versatility of this pattern more than anything. You can use a variety of materials and still get the same effect. So we're going to tie off our dubbing loop here, make sure everything's nice and secure onto our hook shank. Trim off the excess. And if you trap a couple fibers, that's okay, we can always cut those out. Now we're going to be tying in our grizzly saddle hackle here. So we're going to be tying in 2 feathers today, 1 grizzly and 1 brown. So I'm going to strip the fibers on the lower half of our feather here, and we're just going to tie those in at the front, and we're just going to let those hang back. Same process on this guy here. Tie that in at the front of our hook here. Make sure we get those wraps nice and secure. And we're going to come back in with our ice dub here and finish the front portion of this fly. Just grab a very sparse amount. We're just going to create a dubbing noodle. We're going to come in here with our whip finish tool. And we're just going to do 2 here for good measure today. Trim off our excess. And I'm just going to grab a quick drop of super glue. I'm going to apply it onto my bodkin here. Just hit the head here. So what we're going to do again here is we're just going to flip this fly in our vise here. So I'm going to take my vise pawn actually and just tuck those feathers underneath just for our tie-in point here. Get a couple nice tight wraps. Take my vice pawn off those feathers here. I'm just gonna tie these down into our post here. And again, I'm just gonna put a couple drops of super glue onto my thread here. Just a couple drops onto a bod kit. Mainly because we don't have a lot of materials and a lot of thread going onto this post, so I just want to make sure that everything's going to be nice and locked in. So we're going to start off with our brown feather here, and I want that concave side to be facing down. About 4 or 5 wraps, and we're going to tie this off at the bottom of our post here. Cinch down on that thread, make sure it's nice and secure. It's the last part of the flaw we want to go on us. We're going to do the same with our grizzly feather here. Now we can come in here with our whip finish tool. And trim off our excess. Just gonna put this back into our vise here, so we can trim off our parachute post. So I'm going to trim this to about 1/4 of an inch. And there you have it. That is a finished Purple Haze.